Yes, lads, and welcome back to the Jebbo 37 YouTube channel, where today we have got our first episode of the Jebbo Talks Podcast for the season 2, I believe. And we've got our first guest here, Neil Roberts, also known as Robbo. Robbo, how are we, mate?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. It's a pleasure, especially I didn't know I was the first one. So no pressure.
Of course, mate, of course. So obviously I've got some intel on where you spent your career in terms of being a professional footballer. But the first thing I really want to ask is what was it like being a professional footballer back when you played compared to like what you see it as nowadays?
Yeah, I think probably the first thing is that from a technical point of view, are players better now? No, not necessarily. I think technically when I was coming through, there was a lot of very, very talented players. I think the one big difference is from a physicality point of view. I think the athleticism now of players is there's no hiding place. I think you've only got to look at Wrexham at the moment. I'm a big believer in again, a little bit like Man United were back in the day, about playing to the very last second, not just minute, second. And I think we're seeing that now with what Phil Parkinson's done at Wrexham, is that the players are evidently fitter than what they were previously. So, when we get these last minute winners, or there's goal line clearances, or people are switched on, sort of thing. There's no secret that it's what Phil's done off pitch, sort of on the training ground. So I think that's the biggest thing I can say from a difference between then and now in many ways.
So would you say that's more to do with like the training side in terms of how hard they work, how far they run and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, I think it's you run longer and you run harder, sort of thing. And I think the other side of it is that there's a lot more let's say sort of evidence out there that again, the fitter you are, the stronger. Listen, in football, everybody's always known that if you're fitter and you're stronger than your opponent, it's the same in any sort of sport in many ways. But I think with football, the sort of introduction of sports science, the introduction of nutrition, the knowledge that's out there now on what certain foods or fluids can do to you in terms of your preparation or your recovery between games. Wrexham go, they play Saturday and they play today. So it's kind of it's a massive part of the game now that you've got to be super fit, and if you're not, you'll fall by the wayside. Yeah.
So when you made your debut, like how nervous was you for that?
Yeah, I spoke about this on the weekend. When I was at the game, I did a Q&A for some of the fans groups, and I think the biggest thing for me was that I tended to park sort of my emotions into the back of my mind. So when I made my debut, my first appearance was against Chesterfield, like September '97, and then I made my full debut November of that season. And I think the overriding factor for me was kind of being focused on the game, and also another element to it is that nobody knew I was going to be playing. So on my full debut, it was a little bit of a surprise. I was obviously hopeful that I'd be getting it, but didn't know till literally you're in the changing room, and then it's kind of like I was around a really vastly experienced squad of players, the likes of Kevin Russell, Peter Ward, Tony Humes, Brian Carey, Andy Marriott, Dean Spring, Carl Connolly. The list goes on, and they were all, I don't know, let's say maybe Carl was probably late 20s, but I think the rest of them were all 32, 33 in the sort of, let's call it twilight of their careers, that put their arm around me and kind of, especially I remember like Peter Ward saying to me once, you're with us, you're part of it, you deserve to be here. But by the way, now we expect from you. So it was a little bit sort of twofold. It was like a bit of a hidden message in there that, you're here, but don't let us down. You know, you're in the trenches sort of thing. And,
Yeah.
and I loved that mentality, because I was very much about, obviously you've never seen me play, and, you know, lots of the younger generation, Wrexham fans and wherever else I played haven't, but I was all about, it's a little bit blood and guts, you know, I was about sort of, you know, working hard, creating opportunities for others more than myself. I was a team player.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of lent itself maybe to, you know, to having the career I had, and, you know, having the opportunities I had, because, you know, there's a lot of individuals out there.
Yeah, 100%, especially in this day and age anyway.
Well, even more so now, you know. Back then it was, I think there was more of a reliance on people like myself to kind of do in many ways, listen, I was a bit of a kind of foil for better players. And I'm all right with that. That's fine with me, because I was, you know, if they're successful, it means I am. And
exactly.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
So would you say there was any expectations on you, obviously, because it was your first spell at Wrexham, in terms of how young you were, and all that stuff? Do you think like there was a big like expectation for you?
Yeah, I think whatever walk of life or sport that you're in professionally, there's always expectation on you. I think I overachieved in terms of my ability, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
There was never a problem, attitude and application. That was fine. It was always there. Were there better players than me? Yes, there were, without a doubt. However, I think the expectation levels that I set for myself were always my sort of, you know, that was my driving force. So first and foremost, you know, my family, you know, they knew what I could do. My friends, and then outside of that, you know, being a local boy there's an additional expectation on you that, well, come on, let's see what you're about now, because if you don't play well, then you kind of you don't have the same enjoyment of being local, because again, if you lose, you take it home with you. You'll see somebody in the shop the next morning when you get the paper, or you tend to shy away from going out. You know, it's you know, there's loads of examples of maybe lads that should have, would have, could have. I'm females as well. You know, my daughter plays now for Wrexham Women's, and you know, she's recognised. She got asked for a photo. It was a beautiful moment. There was a young girl on Saturday at the Wrexham game, and she recognised Mia, and she asked for a photo with Mia. So for me, as a father, sitting back and witnessing that was like, yeah, it was a special moment, you know. And obviously, what comes with that is there's a bit of pressure, especially, you know, she's my daughter. Her uncle played for Wrexham, was a very good player, and now she's kind of going through that process. So I think she's got a little bit of an advantage, because she's got me to advise, who's been there, done it. She's got her uncle as well, and hopefully she has a successful career doing what she loves. So
so would you say, like, how can I put it? Would you say everything is completely different now, and that's including like money and everything else compared to now?
Well, I've been really fortunate, is that I played and I retired when I was 30, so I was quite young in fairness. But I think the biggest change, if we're talking about on pitch, it's the fact that they need to be an athlete, as opposed to being technically good and not being able to get about the park. Every player now needs to be of a certain level. I think when you talk about football off pitch, it's completely gone 360. Now, will it come back? I think it's probably gone too far to come back to what it was. I think the financial element, you know, and I was saying before, is that I've been lucky in that I had a really good career, but then I had a really successful career behind the scenes. So I worked for, you know, one of the biggest clubs in the world in Manchester City, and that was kind of working with, you know, some of the best talent in the world, you know, the likes of Phil Foden, Jadon Sancho, Brahim Diaz, Karim Rekik, Eric Garcia, some of these young players who have gone on to have fantastic careers already, and they're still only 21, 22.
Yeah, exactly.
Phil Foden turns 22 at the end of this month, and I've known him since he was 8. It's amazing to see. It's amazing to see the kid and his development, and not only as a player but as a person. And I think what you get now is, obviously there's a couple of elements. The first one being the finance involved.
Yeah.
I think the second one is social media and the sort of speed at which something will appear. And I mean, look at us now. This was never even thought of when I was starting out. But it's become part of their lives, and I think from a social point of view, you can't pop to the shop anymore if you're one of those players I've named.
Yeah.
You'd find it very difficult because, again, there's an element of risk with everything when you become a name and a profile. So would I like to be one of those players now? No, I wouldn't. David Beckham set the trend in my eyes. Obviously, generations ago, Georgie Best, Gaza, but they were kind of before my time. But I came through the same time as David, and I remember him. He used to live a couple of doors down from me in Manchester when I lived there, and I remember his sort of progress and his journey when he went to Bury, and he went, and he did the hard yards.
Yeah.
But what he did especially well was creating this commercial side to him.
Yeah.
His saleability, and obviously it also helps that he's a good-looking lad, and he can hold the sort of conversation with anybody in any life. So I think if I'm honest, I think it has changed like ridiculously. However, I don't think football needs to be changed anymore from an on-pitch perspective. I think they need to stop messing around with VAR and all of this. They're on about rule changes. They keep changing formats because it's all a commercial conversation about finance. And the minute that finance runs football, I think we're on a slippery slope.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you there. I mean, I'm an Evertonian myself, so if you look at some of the VAR decisions we've had against us, then it's argumentable. But apart from obviously making your professional debut for Wrexham in your first spell, what was your best moment there at the club?
Well, I think, I'll be totally candid, is my full debut was my overriding moment, special moment. It was my mum's birthday. So we were away at Carlisle. I didn't know I was playing. And I started the game and I scored 2 on my debut. So on my full debut. So that for me is definitely, listen, there's been loads of moments there, and we had some great FA Cup moments, and some couple of giant killings as they call them. But to score 2 on my full debut, and with it being my mum's birthday, I just think that all my family and friends were there. It was just surreal, and I watched the video back now, or YouTube as it is now. And you'll notice with me, I don't know what to do when I score.
Yeah.
Because it's that sort of, we went 1 down, then I got it back to 1-1. Then I think we went 2-1 up, and then they equalised. And it's interesting. It's quite funny because Matt Jansen was their sort of new kid on the block, and me and Matt are a similar age, so we knew each other. And he was playing for Carlisle. And then what happens sort of months later with him is Blackburn come in, and he becomes this sort of multi-million-pound centre forward. And I was kind of looking on going, oh, this is what can happen, sort of thing. And, it was really, football is more than anything, is right place, right time.
Yeah, 100%. So have you got any stories to tell then about your first spell at Wrexham? Like, who's the joker in the dressing room?
There was loads, but it was a senior squad. It was an older team. So I was very much sort of the young kid. There was myself, Mark McGregor, Neil Wainwright. Brian Hughes was kind of had broken in and had cemented himself in the team and went on to have a fabulous career. There was like the list goes on, and then Ian Rush joins. So like for me, I'm a red, obviously you're a blue, so you won't feel the same about it. But I think some of those moments of being in a dressing room with him, Sir Alex Ferguson, like Darren Ferguson, obviously played there, it was and still is a very close friend of mine. And Sir Alex Ferguson coming in the changing rooms after Middlesbrough to have a chat with us and say, well done, you're kind of going, hang on a minute, what? So just so surreal. And but I think the one thing that I would say, and again, I said this on Saturday, was that I'd love to have had the support the lads have got now from not just a financial perspective, but an awareness, an opportunity sort of thing. That with that squad, because make no bones about it, you put us then up against the team now. Personally, I think we're night and day. and that's not being sort of big-headed or anything, but I'd be more than confident that we would dictate that game and sort of and come out successful sort of thing. But you're never going to see it. If you ask Graham Souness about the current team and his team, he'd say the same, I'm sure. But it's just about, being amongst good lads who, have got the same sort of, if you like, driving sort of beliefs and that sort of work ethic.
Yeah. It's a perfect answer, that, mate. So what was the atmosphere like in terms of the fan base? Like, how different is that compared to today's game? Like in terms of Wrexham?
Do you know what? I don't. I go to games now as a fan, so as you know. So I'll go in the pub before the game. I'm still seeing the same faces. There's not like for me the hardcore sort of nucleus of the Wrexham fan base is still exactly the same. Yeah. So I'll see them, in the turf, the Acton, in the parish, in town, wherever you go, and it's, you have this sort of connection with them as a former player that, they've always been, and let's get it right, thick and thin. Yeah. They've always been there. Now to see us getting on like 10,000 every home game is credit to, is credit to their loyalty. Yeah. I also think it's, I think there's a lot to be said for, like I said before, is what Phil's done. And what Phil has done is slowly but surely built a really, really good foundation, which is what we needed. Yeah. We didn't need to make promises. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And you'll notice with Phil, he's done minimal in terms of his sort of presence out there in town. He's done a couple of Q&As and things like that. But I think what you get with that man is he knows, he's been there, he's done it before, and he's worked at much bigger clubs than Wrexham FC, with the greatest respect to us. And as a player, I love seeing him. So I sat behind him and by the dugout on Saturday and watched his passion, watched his animation, watched his sort of, maybe his colourful language, let's call it that. But he's rallying the crowds. Yeah. When was the last manager that did that? The last person to do it, and I hold him in the highest regard, is Joey Jones. Joey would turn and he'd give the fist pump, and that was what a lot of, in particular, my mates and my generation of friends that are all, Wrexham fanatics, is that's what they wanted. If you play for the town, if you pull on that shirt, then you make sure that you run through a brick wall. You make sure that you win every tackle, or at least go in where everyone goes, he's trying, he's working hard, that's all they ask for. And I think that is, in many ways, probably a little bit similar to Everton fans. So, for me, 100%. Everton fans, all they want is their players to be, if you like, their attitude and application to be spot on. Yeah. They'll let you get away with mistakes. Obviously, if it keeps happening, they won't. However, there's a fundamental thing, and I think it's just part of the fabric of the football club, you know. I think that's what Wrexham fans are about, and you know, wait till we go to Wembley, because Wembley, make no bones about it, it'll be red. It'll be red that day. There'll be 25,000 Wrexham there, maybe more. I think we've got 29,000 tickets, but I think we'll probably do 23, 24,000 that'll go that day. And do you know what? There's another 10, 15,000 that are going. I would have gone, but I'm thinking about the league, because we got West Ham potentially if we get to the playoff final, or I want to be at the whatever last game of the season, or you know, there's always reasons why people can't go as well. I think we're taking 80 coaches.
Jesus,
it's phenomenal. You know what I mean? So 81, because I've got one as well. So.
You going to Wembley, are you, Neil?
Yeah. There's 34 of us going, so we've got a bus, and the one thing that we had to make sure the bus has got a toilet.
I think it's like that with every coach, though, mate, isn't it? Because if it doesn't, mate, you're done for.
I couldn't go if there's no toilet on there. That shows me.
So going on from transition now from Wrexham to Wigan. So at this point, what's your feeling? Obviously, going from Wrexham to Wigan.
Yeah, it was tough, but like, and you can ask Brian Flynn, you can ask whoever else was involved, sort of Price Griffiths. They were all brilliant with me. You know, it was a lot of money for the club, so there was a lot of money coming in. The first question I asked was, "Do the club need it?" And they were like, "Yeah, they need it." So I knew I was going, whether I didn't want to or not. You know, so. And that was fine with me, because I think I'd done well by the club. I'd been respectful. I was playing first team football, scoring goals, and on 150 quid a week.
Wow.
So I wasn't like, it was never about money. I never knocked his door. I waited for him to come to me. So I was on like £37 a week. Then I went on to 50. Then I went on to 75. Then I went on to 125. And then eventually, just before I left, I went on to 150 quid. And I think that is something that I think I learned it from. So I'm like good friends with Paul Dalglish. And Paul always used to tell me about Kenny, is when Kenny was doing contracts and things, he would always say, "Okay, what's the deal?" And they would put a piece of paper in front of him and say, "This is the deal." And he'd go, "Okay, if that's how you value me, that's what I'll sign." He never had an agent. He never negotiated. He just signed what was put in front of him, because he said, "I want to play for this football club. And if that's where you value me at, that's what I'm worth." And you know, that would never happen now. And maybe it's a little bit naive on Kenny's part, but for me, I think it's really, really, it's a great story in terms of how things have changed. You know,
exactly.
If you compare it to now, you know, look at some of the, if you like, and I'll say it, some of the mercenaries who are out there, not only the agents, but the players, by the way, who will fight and do whatever they have to do, claw their way to getting every single penny out of a football club, potentially that can't afford it, or the agent will be demanding a fee and the move doesn't happen if the agent doesn't get paid. Well, that's the one bit for me that, you know, and it's not all agents. There's loads of good ones out there, and I work with a lot of good ones. And I think that, you know, where finance is involved, it needed to be capped, but they've missed the boat.
Yeah, I think it's gone too far now, hasn't it? Because you look at it, it's not even just like footballers' wages at this point anymore. It's more like, you know, you got your sponsorship deals, whether it's like with Adidas or Nike or whoever else it is. And I mean, if you look at it, the grand scheme of things, like probably most players are like what, like your mercenaries anyway, like what, $1 million a week, including sponsorships and all that stuff. So
they're on a lot of money. Listen, I think that when you have, reality, let's look at it in plain light of day. Look at nurses; they can't get paid for saving lives. That they won't get off the government a £10 rise or whatever. It's a disgrace. And then And then to try and put that in comparison, a nurse with a footballer, it doesn't add up. It doesn't stack up. So why didn't the governing bodies get together with the government and start to align things? And I'm not saying that a nurse needs to be on 100 grand a week or whatever. What I'm saying is that there needs to be a little bit of common sense used that 100%. Then allows a percentage of every single footballer's number to go into a pot that then is across the board from every sort of service that deserves that in terms of nurses, doctors, sort of St. John's, all of these sort of people that do brilliant work. And, you could even go as far as say, the police, the fire, ambulance crews, they've all at some point or other come across hard times. And, it's like going back to, people going down the mines. It's like, obviously them days they're not gone because some people still have to do it. But, the lack of respect that they were shown for what they were doing as a sort of living, is a disgrace. And, without going too deep into politics and whatnot, because it's a football chat, is I just think there's, the people that are running the country, it's a disgrace at the minute. And I think football, because it's so big, it's so commercially viable and popular, is that they can do so much more. And young players as well. And I'll say this, is that I'm a big advocate of literally not giving them everything too soon. So put it in a trust, put a number in a trust, put X amount that they can access, and they can only access the additional if they want to invest in property or a business venture that is then sanctioned, signed off by a group of trustees that are all, in a position of that they're able to do that. And the reason for that is that you get too much too soon, it can mess with this in particular, but also it messes with your longevity in your career, because how much do you need to live? You don't need 100 grand a week. If you want to invest your money, that's slightly different, and that's a business decision. But I just think that I think for the young players in particular, they need a little or a lot more sort of guidance and direction as to what they do with their money or don't do, as the case may be.
100%, mate, spot on. So in terms of your Wigan stint there, so was you there for 4 years? Was it 4 years?
Like 4.5 years, I left in December 2004, I think it was.
So how would you sum up your time as a Wigan player?
Loved it. Like some of the, because I'm a Wrexham lad, and I'll always say that those were the best years of my life playing for my hometown. But Wigan was obviously the most successful. I was part of what I believe is one of the best squads that's been there in many years. When we won the league by like a number of points, I think we broke every record going, sort of thing, under Paul Jewell and Dave Whelan. So I would probably sum it up by saying similar to Wrexham, but a lot more success from winning things, sort of thing, in terms of winning the league. And we were on the cusp when I was there. We played West Ham, and we needed to win to get into the playoffs for the Premier League. And I scored. So I scored fairly early on against West Ham, and then we got absolutely battered, but we held in and we held on. And then Brian Dean come off the bench and scored in the 94th minute or something stupid like that.
Wow.
I think there's a picture. I'd come off in the 85th minute, and I think there's a picture of me just on the bench, just sat like that, because it was one of those sliding doors moments that, if I score that goal and we get through the playoffs and we get promoted, it's a life-changing one, because then I would have potentially been albeit a squad player, but a Premier League squad player.
Yeah.
And that was the bit in my career that I'll always remember as a great moment, because again, scoring against West Ham is a special moment.
Yeah.
But literally being that close to what is sort of meant to be the biggest the biggest game on in world football because of the money involved to get to the Premier League is, I was nearly there, but not quite, unfortunately.
So you've also had 2 loan spells, one being with Hull City and the other one being with Bradford City. How would you describe your time whilst out on loan with them?
Yeah, well, like my first loan was when I was at Wrexham. I went to Bangor in the League of Wales. And that was like pivotal in my career in terms of opening my eyes and kind of toughening me up to go and play in men's football at 17 and like, I need to get stronger, I need to get fitter, and I need to get faster.
Yeah.
So I think when I was at Wigan, I'd had a really bad ankle injury and I missed out on playing at Wembley. Wow. So I was in the stand for that, and that. I'd had injections, cortisones, everything. They were trying everything to get me fit for it, but yeah, my ankle was knackered. So I missed out on that. And then the following season, it was kind of like, do you know what? I don't want to just be a person that comes in, and I was on a good contract and things, that picks me money up, trains, doesn't play on the weekends. Yeah. So the Hull City one was actually an ex-Wrexham manager, Brian Little, who took me there. And that was again another one that was a catalyst for me to kind of go open my eyes a bit and go, I don't want to be chasing my tail in the reaches of the leagues. I want to still be successful. I was 23, something like that, living in Manchester on my own, probably partying a little bit too much and things like that. It was a reality check for me, and that worked really well. And then I think the Bradford one was probably the best one for me because Paul Jewell said to me, you're always going to be in my squad every week. He was dead honest with me, Paul Jewell. He was brilliant. One of the best managers I've had. And he always said, you'll be in my squad, but I can't say you'll be starting games for me in the Championship. So I was like, okay, no problem. Appreciate that. But would you mind if I go on loan? And I know Bradford want me. It's a big club, massive club. And I loved my time there. I only did a month. But then what happened was right towards the end, my agent at the time got a call to say that Doncaster were interested in taking me. And Bradford and Doncaster sort of went head to head in terms of agreeing a deal with the club. I still don't know to this day what they paid, but there was an undisclosed fee. And Doncaster, under the stewardship of John Ryan as chairman, they came out successful. I was settled then with my eldest daughter. She was born. So myself and my wife, we moved to Doncaster, and loved my time up there. I've still got a house up there, and a lot of really good friends. One of my pals from my playing days was James Coppinger. He's still there. He's only just finished playing, unbelievably, but he's now like sporting director, head of football operations, and we've been messaging each other this week. So I'll be going back up there probably pre-season to see some old friends and kind of reconnect with people up there. So the loan moves, I think each one of them, the 3 of them, they all sort of were pivotal at that moment in time for me in terms of, in many ways, a sense check, right? Take a step back, have a look at what you're doing or not doing, as the case was in 2 of the moves anyway. And, looking maybe a little bit too easy to blame other people while you weren't playing, but ultimately it was down to me, and those helped me get back on track in many ways. Yeah,
so obviously you mentioned the Doncaster move. Obviously there's not much of a distance really between Wrexham and Wigan in terms of they're quite close in between, like in the football and world, if that makes sense.
Northwest,
yeah. But obviously Doncaster, it's how did you manage to settle in Doncaster? If don't mind me asking, who helped you as well?
You know what? It was super tough because I remember having a conversation with my now ex-wife, and she used to say, "Well, it's all right for you because you're up there in a hotel. You're probably on the cinema tonight, going to pizza up for your tea or whatever, and I'm at home with the little one and all that. And I said, oh, that's all right. I said, well, why don't you come up? Literally, she'd been there for a day, 2 days in the hotel, and she was like, I don't know how you do this, because I didn't have anyone up there. It was 4 walls, and yes, I would go out and I did make friends, but ultimately my friends were back in Wrexham. My family were back in Wrexham. And did I want to be sat in basically it was upstairs I don't think it's there anymore. There's a really famous hotel there that was also where they sold all the horses at the back by the old ground, Bellevue. So they'd have like horse shows, and it was just like going back in time. And I was up there. I was staying there. They put me in the honeymoon suite. So I had this big old 4-poster bed, which was like, it was like the 1950s, mate. And then like she came and she was like, I now understand what you mean by, sort of when you talk about mental toughness, when you haven't got anyone around you and you're lonely, mobile phones weren't a thing. Social media wasn't a thing. It was like, that was on the cusp of all that happening. And I just ended up used to kind of train. Then I'd do extra in the gym. Then obviously everyone else was going home to their girlfriends, their wives. I was going to this hotel, and you'd end up having chicken in a basket or whatever. I tried to eat well because obviously it's an important part of any footballer's career. But I think it became super tough. And then thankfully I found a little cottage that sort of I fell in love with, and it was just on the outskirts of Doncaster, towards Rotherham, called a little place called Bawtry and Tick Hill. So I ended up buying this house there, and it was a little bit out in the countryside, so real nice views over the back, and it was a perfect little family home. So finally, my family agreed to move up, and we built a lovely little life for ourselves up there, and I enjoyed it. Super people up there, so friendly. It was amazing. Sort of similar to Wrexham and Wigan is that, I've been really fortunate that everywhere I've been, I've connected with not only the fans but become friends with the fans. Yeah. And not all of them, obviously. Some of them rate you, some of them don't. But that doesn't matter to me, because as long as you're a decent person, what it doesn't matter. It's a game of football at the end of the day.
Exactly.
There's more important things that happen, right? So I've still got a lot of really good friends up at Donny, and I hold it like really close to my heart in terms of my time spent there, because again, it was my eldest daughter's sort of first few years of her life that she now looks back on pictures and goes, oh, I remember little bits, and that's really nice.
So was there any different feeling between like your first goal for Wrexham to your first goal to Wigan to then Doncaster?
Well, the first goal for Wrexham obviously means so much more. However, scoring goals for Wigan was a joy. I didn't get many goals wherever I went. I didn't, but I got some really important ones. And I also, whoever I played up front with, and you can speak to any of them really, is, there's a long list of players that have done ever so well from a goal scoring perspective. But I like to think that I play a part of that. And like I say, you can speak to them. Andy Liddell at Wigan, Nathan Ellington at Wigan, Lee McCulloch at Wigan, Wrexham, Carl Conley, you got people like, Dean Spink was probably similar to me, but you got people like the likes of Andy Morrell and sort of the latter part of my time there. Whoever I played with, Chris Llewellyn, Lee McEverley, they always scored goals, and I assisted. I'd love to see what my assists were like. At Doncaster, one of the best lads I've played with is Greg Blundell, Scouser, big Liverpool fan, and a great goal scorer. Unbelievable. He just scored goals for fun. He's now working at Liverpool, I believe, still. And we had a great relationship, and I used to love playing up front with him. Lewis Guy, another young Geordie kid that came down from Newcastle, Ross McCormack, another one that I played with.
Was he the one that used to play for Leeds?
Leeds, he went to Villa. Did he play Rangers? Yeah, Rangers. Yeah, he was Rangers. So, yeah, I think the big thing for me in terms of scoring goals was that I loved scoring goals, but it wasn't the be all and end all. I'd be just as happy if one of my teammates scored, because you're winning the game, right?
It's a team game, yeah.
It's a team game, whereas some people don't see it like that. And, you know, if you did speak to Andy Liddell as an example, he's very much about his records, scoring goals. He's I think I'm right in saying he's the all-time now leading goal scorer for Wigan, because he broke David Lowe's record. And that means a lot to him.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything to me. Because it doesn't. And it's like, you know what? You know, as long as you enjoy it, as long as you're doing your best for the team, and yeah, I want to be successful, and I wanted to be successful, but I didn't care. I didn't care about the personal accolades. It's not, that wasn't a thing for me. And, you know, I'm still like that today. It's, you know, if I can do something for someone else that it's like a feel good thing for me. If I do something by somebody that helps them, I'm happy.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, you went from, was it Doncaster back to Wrexham for the second spell at Wrexham?
Yeah.
So what made you go back to Wrexham? Like, what was the offer that was put on the table for you to then go back there?
There were a couple of factors. The most important factor was my family.
Yeah.
So my family, my daughter was getting to school age. We had another one on the way. My second daughter was sort of imminent. And yeah, it was like, we didn't have a support network around us. So, you know, it was tough. It was tough for us. As much as it was a great life and a lifestyle, we needed to go back home, and more so them than me. Yeah. However, I was in discussions for a new deal at Doncaster. I got a phone call from Rooster, Kev Russell at Wrexham, who was assistant manager to Dennis Smith. And as soon as they said they wanted me, it was like, yeah, do you know what? Let's call it a day. I went in to see the manager at Doncaster, Dave Penny, and I just said, listen, I've never asked for a penny when I've left anywhere. At Wigan, I think I had 2.5 years left. Jeez. So I was owed a lot of money. Yeah. I just said, you know, don't stand in my way. Let's do things, shake hands. And I'm still good mates with Paul Jewell to this day, you know? So yeah. I've kind of always believed in that, is that it comes back round.
Yeah.
So at Doncaster, we shook hands. It was quite funny because, I think it might have been the previous December or whatever, I got married, and we wanted to get married at Christmas. And what happened was they changed our fixtures, and then there was a fixture clash. So my manager went, well, you can't get married, and I was like, well, I can, and I will. We've made this booking. We're not changing it. So I think I got a 2-week fine or whatever it was. But the funny thing is that my best man was my brother, or he was one of two. I got my two brothers. He was playing for Doncaster as well, so they lost both of us. So it was like, yeah, because it's more important. Yeah, you know, family first, football. It's probably fourth on my list, in fairness, behind me dog. So and my friends. So it's it's one of them, really.
Yeah. What would you say would be the difference between the first spell at Wrexham to the second spell? Because obviously, with the second spell, am I right in saying that time ended there as soon as Wrexham got relegated to the conference? Is that be right in me saying that? Yeah.
Well, the first season is where we had the kind of time. I mean, there was a lot of false promises made to me about what they were going to do, and sort of not build around me, but build with me. So if I agreed to come back, they would then, obviously Fergie was still there, Dennis Lawrence was still there. There was a lot of really good talent in the team. But slowly but surely, they all sort of exited and Wrexham cashed in. But they never replaced with what I believe needed to be the quality that I was promised, you know? Yeah. you know, when I did come back, and you know, the lads that were there, I think, and I've said this on previous occasions, is I don't think any of us sort of performed to our sort of maximum level or potential. You know, there were probably a few exceptions to that, and I'm quite happy naming people as well. Is that, you know, the likes of like Chris Llewellyn, I thought he did really well for us. He was always a goal threat and one of the fittest lads I've ever played with. You had Stevie Evans, who came in from non-league. He was immense. He was like a giant, and he was great for me because he would be somebody that I know if I'm going into a battle, you want Stevie with you. He's always got your back, sort of thing, and I love that. And then you know, Ryan Valentine, I think, deserves a special mention because Ryan was probably one of the most one of the best players that I've played with, and he never ever got the credit that he deserved. And I think for somebody like him, again, he's a local boy. You know, he'd been at Darlington. I think he might have played, I don't know, I want to say Hartlepool, but I think it was Darlington. And then I think he's even still playing, like another one that you want in the trenches with you. However, outside of that, we kind of went with the young generation that were coming through, and they were really good young players, but we needed more experience. Yeah. So we had Neil Taylor, we had Simon Spencer. Look at the career Neil's had, you know. Yeah. Neil Taylor, Simon Spencer, the Williams brothers, Gareth Evans, you know, young Pedge. Just trying to think, Matty Doan, what a great winger he was, and had a super career, you know, Levi Mackin, people like that. Now, they were all good. They were all really good players. But what we went with is youth heavy as opposed to experience heavy. And when we did try to get experience, some of the managers, it was like an old pals act, you know. They were bringing in lads that, with the greatest respect to them, they couldn't do it. They couldn't get about the pitch, or, you know, they just didn't have that sort of connection with Wrexham to go, I'm going to run through every person on this pitch to get 3 points. And unfortunately, it caught up with us in the second season. And, you know, we are where we are sort of still to this day. So, hopefully that ends soon.
Yeah. What was the feeling like, obviously, getting relegated? Was that like the first ever relegation that you'd suffered in your career as well?
Yeah, first ever one, and thankfully the last one I had. And I think, it massively affected me, both from a family perspective and family and friends, but also from a mental point of view. I'd had a lot going on in my life, sort of around them, because it was, well, what happens if, you know, I got player of the season, like, and then bizarrely, or should never happen, is that I got told on my way into the training ground to find out if I was getting kept on or not. I saw Stuart Webber, who was the groundsman at the time, and he's now director of football at Norwich. And he said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, mate." And I went, "What for?" So he knew before me. The groundsman, with the greatest respect to him, the groundsman knew before me. Well, that should never happen.
Yeah, 100%.
And that was Brian Little and Martin Foyle. And they must have spoken. They must have had a coffee with some of the staff, or somebody's overheard, and Chinese whispers, and it's got out. So I went into the training ground, and I thanked them, and I just said, "Listen, just do me a favor. Don't ever do that to anyone else, because it's a disgrace how I found out. It's a real lack of respect, but it's also a lack of respect to yourselves, because, you know, they've been in the game forever and a day, and that, imagine, well, they wouldn't like that done to them, right? Nobody would in any walk of life, whether you've been player of the season, whether you're a local lad or not. Shouldn't happen, full stop. So that was a real sort of blow to me. And I think what I did was, and I can talk about it now, is that I parked it in the back of my sort of head, and unfortunately it caught up with me in later life, and I suffered really badly with some anxiety and sort of stress related issues. So it's a big part of football, is that it's not all roses. It's a tough career. yes, there can be rewards and it can be a fantastic life, but there's so many ups and downs, and the best way to describe it is what most people I know to say about it is it's a roller coaster. And if you can try and keep that instead of that, then you stand a good chance of not only being successful, but kind of keeping your sort of mental frame of mind in place, and not going through perhaps what I've done and what lots of others are going through now, and maybe is not able to or too afraid to share with people.
Yeah, 100%. So from Wrexham took you to Rill in was it the Welsh Premier League?
Yeah.
How long did you
Welsh
play there for?
I just did one season. I signed a 3-year contract, but I did one season. Loved it. Loved every minute of it. We did what we said we'd do when we went in. I said that I'll help them with their recruitment and bring in other players that I knew could make a difference, like Sir Danny Williams and Josh Johnson and a couple of others as well. And we just built a really, really great squad. The owners backed us, who I'm still very good friends with to this day. And we had a great journey, and we kind of, I think we knocked TNS off their perch, because they'd run riot in that league for a few years, and I knew that what we could do and what I was about, and I think in many ways it was just about going and enjoying my football again.
Yeah,
and I did do that, and then thankfully an opportunity came up for me to go on to the next chapter, which was behind the scenes in football at Manchester City.
Yeah, so what would you say would be the difference, like, in terms of standard? Because obviously the Welsh Prem's not really seen as high in regard to obviously the English football in terms of standards, if that makes sense. So what would you say is like the difference in the standards of the football?
I think I don't think there's much of an awareness about the Welsh League, for one. The exposure it gets isn't matched with the quality that's in there. Wherever you go, and if you look at, like, listen, the Sunday League in Liverpool, right? The Sunday League in Liverpool, there's some unbelievable players in there that without a shadow of a doubt can play league football. So what you get when you have lads that are in league football, they seem to think that they're better than what they are, in my opinion. It's one thing getting there, it's another thing staying there and continuing to be successful. So like ability on its own is not enough. So what I would say about League of Wales and the National League, and even up in Scotland, I tell you what, it's not easy. It's not easy, and there's some really good players there. And what they are, I would suggest, is if you look at Wrexham, it's a good example. Well, you got Paul Mullin, and he's done it in the league. He's scored a number of goals at his last club. But there's one thing sort of doing it at Div 2 National League. Honestly, the jumps that you make when you go, and I found it coming Wrexham, we were in the same league as Wigan. Then at Wigan, we got promoted. And honestly, it went, it goes from there to there. It's not a little jump. It's not Div 2 to Div 1. When you go Div 1 to Championship, honestly, it's mind-blowing, and the league is so intense. And then obviously what you've got is Championship to bottom third of Prem. Then you've got mid third of Prem, and then when you get into the top 6, forget about it. It's like that is Champions League, as we refer to it. So I think where the League of Wales is concerned is there's a lot of really, really talented players in there. The physical aspect of it is tough. You've got to be tough to kind of survive in that league, and you've also got to be mentally strong, because you might have a 4-hour journey on a Tuesday. You've worked 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you're going to get a half day. What's your boss going to say if you're a plumber? What's he going to say? So are you dedicated, or are you going to go, well, do you know what? I need to work. I need the money.
Yeah,
because it's part time. It's not full time. So a couple of them are full time, but that season that we had was a great group of lads. Again, similar to all the clubs I've been at, is that the changing rooms have always been brilliant. Yeah. So it was a togetherness, there was trust. You want them in the trenches with you, and ultimately they're good players. The reason that they're at that level is more than anything is the mentality. Because like I said before, there's a reason why Messi and Ronaldo are still the best in the world. It's because of that.
Yeah.
Their ability takes them so far, but without that, they won't stay there.
So we'll finish it off with the afterlife after football. So obviously after your season with Real, what have you done since you've retired? Like, obviously you mentioned working for Man City, but have you done anything else? And like, what is it that you do at Man City as well?
Well, I joined Man City in 2009 to work for the owners in Abu Dhabi. So I worked directly for Sheikh Mansour as part of his purchase of the football club. They were looking to improve the standard of football in the UAE. Yeah. So he's got another club in the UAE called Al Jazeera. Yeah. And my role was to run a program for him to bring their most talented 14, 15-year-olds over to the UK and put them on a football education and cultural program, which I ran for 3 years. I was able to build a team around me, so I brought in the likes of Simon Davis, ex-Man City manager, ex-Chester City manager, and Manchester United class of '92 captain. A great guy, unbelievable coach, and he now works for Vincent Company in Anderlecht. Then I brought in Gareth Taylor, ex-Wrexham, ex-Man City centre forward. He's now in charge of the women's team at Manchester City. And then I was allowed to bring in a couple of other people on the periphery that were sports science, nutrition. So I built this whole team, and it was superb. I'm still in touch with all the young players that we brought across, and they've got all their spoken and written English now. So they went through our education system in a private school, and their football they're still playing out in UAE. So the plan worked. We worked with I think it was about 16 young players over 3 years, and they're all parents now. They're back in the UAE in their homeland. The experience that they gained from it is unbelievable, and that allowed me then to become mainstream Manchester City. So I became head of operations at the academy, and then in my last sort of 3 years there, I became head of what's called player acquisition, which is basically head of recruitment. So my role was to do all the deals and sign the best players from around the world. So you've seen, I mentioned a few of them before, but we signed Jadon Sancho at 13 from Watford. So I did the deal with his agent and his father. Mino Raiola, who sadly passed away this week, dealt with him on a number of potential signings. And again, it was like it catapulted me into a different sort of network and level of relationships, and it was phenomenal. Loved every minute of it. It became a little bit too much towards the end because I think it was a single man's job, and I was a married father of 3, and by that I mean you were having to jump on a plane to Barcelona one day, the next day you get back, you might have to go back. Yeah, it's kind of that sort of so fluid, and your availability is you have to be available. There's no the answer's yes every time sort of thing. So, it was amazing, and I'm still very close to a lot of people at Manchester City, and I love my time there, and I don't regret it for 1 second. So that I left there in 2018. I then obviously I needed some time out, so I took sort of 18 months of time out and worked on a building site for my friend. So in many ways, sort of retrained, and that got me through COVID. I was a labourer digging holes every day, so I needed something that involved physical activity and graft, and he was brilliant with me. Geraint, good friend of mine, who allowed me that opportunity to work with him and his father. And then I, in February 2021, I was asked if I'd go back into football and I became head of recruitment at Swansea City.
So you're still doing that now, are you?
No, I left Swansea City I did a year there, but then just decided that the football world from a day-to-day perspective is not something for me anymore. I think, I've had 28 years or 29 years as being either professional footballer or working in a professional environment. And my time has sort of elapsed now. So I've opted out, and I'm working for myself. I've always managed to keep another business alongside everything I've done from the playing days and whatnot. And it's nice to get some time back. I've got 3 young children who have grown old before my eyes. So I've got an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old. I've got a beautiful partner who lives in Portsmouth, and we get to spend 50% of the week together, and then the other 50 I obviously go back with the children. And it's life's good. Life's good for me, and I'm really grateful for what football's done. However, I think the next steps are not directly in it, but maybe's on the periphery and alongside it, as opposed to being in the detail.
Okay, so if you could pick anyone for me to do another podcast with, like get on the podcast, who would you pick?
Who would I pick? Or
yeah. Who would you suggest?
Are we going Wrexham?
Can do, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do one from each of my clubs. So Wrexham, I would say I would go with Kevin Russell, Rooster. He'd be brilliant. He'd be different to me in that he's got all the stories. Yeah. I've got a few, but he's got a lot of really funny ones. I think from Wigan, I would say Jimmy Bullard.
Yeah.
So, and then Doncaster, I would go with James Coppinger. So let me know if you want me to introduce you to him.
Please,
we can do that.
100%. I'm going to wrap this up, mate. So thank you so much for coming on. For anyone else who enjoys this, make sure you like and subscribe and tap that bell for more notifications for as and when I do upload. And see you on another matchday vlog or another podcast, maybe.
Perfect. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.